All right, we got wireless caller on the air. Wireless caller, what's your name? Wireless caller, what's your name?
This is Kalev.
Yeah, Kalev, my Kalev.
Kalev means dog in Hebrew, by the way. So he's saying my dog. What's going on, my dog?
Yeah. So to change it up a little bit, okay, for the sake of argument. So I had previously watched a really great video with Rabbi David Barhaim. Highly recommend him if you guys haven't already heard of him. But one of the questions asked to the rabbi was, when is it okay to jettison a minhag? I want to kind of up that. Like, my question is, when is it okay to jettison like a rabbinic law, like actual halacha?
All right, so a takana is a positive rabbinic command, and a gezerah is a negative rabbinic command. It says that if a custom is established, first of all customs were established by the court. This notion that only because a custom arises in Israel, it becomes obligatory, and people will take with statements like Minig Israel Torachi, whether the customs are Israel or Torah, or Minig Israel ka halacha, whether the customs are like halacha, are only the customs that are established by the court or sanctioned by the court. So like we have a custom like Takanas Ezra. Takanas Ezra was ultimately a custom that didn't stick. The understanding is that if the first generation of Israelites don't run and don't accept the custom, it dies. But once it's been accepted and it's part of Jewish life, then it takes on an unmovable status when there's no Sanhedrin, because the Sanhedrin could abolish a rabbinic law whenever they want, and they could abolish a custom whenever they want. But we haven't had a Sanhedrin since the destruction, about 100 years after the destruction of the temple. And so all these laws are set in stone now. I mean, I think that's the answer. That any custom that's made it this far, that was established by the court, is not movable. But the first generation, if Israel did not embrace the custom, then it would die on its own. And that's it.
Now, what if the custom came from the Achronim?
Well, so Achronim are rabbis post the closing of the Shulchan Aruch. There's different eras in the Jewish world. For those listening, there's the Tanaim, there's the Amoraim, the Savarim, the Gaonim, the Rishonim, and the Achronim. So some people even say that the Achronim are rabbis today, but other people, I think, ended it before the 19th century. So clearly, anything a rabbi today creates as a custom could be binding in his own synagogue from a communal perspective. That means if you're praying in a synagogue, like, you should do what they do, but you shouldn't be what's called tivrosh min hatibor, like stand out from the community. But it's not binding on all of Israel. I mean, if you don't like what happens in one synagogue, you can go to another synagogue. This is why we have different customs in groups within Israel. But we can't abolish any ruling that was established by the court. Now, we could weigh things out. I mean, sometimes a ruling is not clear. A rabbinic ruling is not clear if and how it's applicable nowadays. So there, I mean, the rabbis in Masechet Beitzah tell us that we have to interpret it in a lenient manner. But if there's a question on a Torah commandment, then in the same portion, it says that we have to interpret it from a strict manner, telling us always that Torah is king. Torah overrides everything, and for sure that overrides rabbinic commands. Now, there is ways to abolish rabbinic commands also. The notion of gezerah al gabi gezerah, or a sfeika. Now, this is a little more complicated, but if you have a prohibition on a prohibition, then it automatically dissolves it. Okay. Right. Also, with the notion of a sfeika, but that applies more for a Torah commandment, that it could abolish itself. So you can't have a prohibition on top of a prohibition. If there's a rabbinic command prohibiting something, and then in the same Talmud, there's another law trying to build a fence to keep you from breaking a prohibition that's rabbinical, it washes itself out.
Well, this is kind of my question from a few weeks ago. I'm sorry to interrupt. Back on the chicken and poultry thing. I mean, we see in the Mishnah that Rabbi Akiva, who we're going to venerate actually tonight for Lag Omer, he had poultry.
No, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Wait. You're confusing different guys here. All right. No. So Lag BaOmer is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, not Rabbi Akiva. Right?
I mean, aren't they both kind of?
But he still
like no.
Wait,
I'm
hold
sorry.
on. Hold on.
Wait. Rabbi Akiva had to do with Labo Amar. His student didn't like
That's
10,000 of his students passed away.
No.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm student.
Right, that his students stopped dying. But in terms of the fire,
That's true.
yeah, but Lag
Oh,
BaOmer
The
itself-
holiday itself is different from what hacks. Okay, yeah.
right. But also, I think what you wanted to say, Rabbi Yossi HaGalili.
Not in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says pretty clearly, and when it's talking about this, there was Rabbi Akiva who actually ate poultry and chicken,
No.
not poultry and dairy. I might be
No,
misquoting.
No, like
But
Yossi
again-
HaGalili ate poultry with dairy. Like, it wasn't Rabbi Akiva.
Okay. Well,
I mean, it's a
maybe-
popular thing. I mean, I mentioned it many times, right?
So, Rabbi, why did this stick? Why was poultry and dairy became a prohibition, but not like fish and dairy? Why was that so prevalent? Why did
Right.
one stick and not the other?
Because one may come to accidentally think that something is poultry when it's really beef. And there's this understanding, which I don't completely embrace, that the whole Isser of Basar V'chalav of not mixing meat and dairy is a Torah prohibition and not a rabbinic prohibition, or really like an asmachta, which is a rabbinic prohibition that has some sort of biblical foreshadowing to it. So it's not a rabbinic prohibition on a rabbinic prohibition. It's a rabbinic prohibition on a Torah prohibition. So that's why it's stuck. I mean, technically, mixing meat and dairy today, I think all rabbis would agree the way it's done nowadays, it's clearly a rabbinic prohibition, because the prohibition is not boiling a kid in his mother's milk. But if you're eating a cheeseburger,
I've heard that.
Right.
I've heard that you can. I've
Well,
heard
the
someone
milk-
say to me that you can use goat milk, cheese made from goat milk, and then beef. Well, it's too different.
No.
It's not.
well, it's still prohibited from the rabbis, but it's not prohibited from the Torah. The milk that was used to make the cheese was not related to the meat that was used to make the burger. So that makes it a rabbinic prohibition. But it's still a gezerah not to eat poultry with milk, because chickens don't lactate.
Okay, so yeah,
Right.
I was incorrect earlier about Rabbi Akiva eating it, but Rabbi Akiva in Mishnah Chulin says wild animals and fowls are not included in the prohibition of the Torah, for it's written 3 times, you should not see the kid in his mother's milk, to exclude wild animals, foul, and unclean animals. So I guess my question again from the past few weeks is what does this fall under that same rubric of, if the Talmud later on, which it does, try to build a fence more around this, and again, we venerate Rabbi Akiva with so many different things. So does this apply?
No. So when he says, like, he's making a distinction between Torah law and rabbinic law. Like, he's saying that from the Torah, it doesn't exclude wild animals, and it doesn't exclude, well, like I said, dairy that wasn't related to the actual beef. This is tied to the notion of patur of al-asur. So patur of al-asur means that in rabbinic literature, when it says that you're not liable or you're exempt, means that you're still liable from a rabbinic perspective, but you're just not liable from a Torah perspective. But the rabbis in the Talmud constantly made a distinction between Torah law and rabbinic law. And I know it sounds foreign to many people nowadays, because rabbis nowadays make no distinction. And that's a dumbing down on Judaism. Why? Because it shows, unlike what many Karaites would teach you, that the rabbis in the Talmud elevated Torah above everything and saw the rabbinical as a way to interpret ceremonial law, to build consensus so Israel could progress in a uniform manner. But they're not trying to override Torah.
Yeah, so I was wondering, because I haven't had the opportunity to look yet, when did the current vowel point system come into play? And what were some of the others that I guess didn't make the cut? Do you know? Because right now we use the Masoretic, obviously Masoretic text, the Masoretes. But from my understanding, from a scholarly point of view, that there were others that didn't quite make the cut.
There were different versions of the vowel system.
Yeah.
Was there? Okay.
I'm
So if
not aware
anyone
of
opened
it.
up a Torah scroll, you would see that it's just consonants. There's no vowels.
I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware. It was passed down by tradition that what certain words means. I mean, there's some words in Hebrew that are spelled identical and mean 2 different things. Like mitzvot and matzot, and
But what I mean is, tradition is passed down, but accent Peter was known by his accent. If John speaks versus I speak, I'm in the South. I have a different accent.
Right. Every tribe had a different pronunciation in Hebrew to a certain extent. Even in Europe, Litvaks that couldn't pronounce the shin, where they would say Sabbat instead of Shabbat. I mean, just nowadays we think because of the internet and everyone and the state of Israel, that's really a melting pot, but that everyone sort of slightly speaks alike, but it's not a.
Well, and then the whole
Shilabeth, was it?
Well, the reason why I was asking is because we know that certain things, you'd have to believe on faith that Halacha, like some Jews do, that Halacha or all, I don't know how many Christians we have on here, but like all Jewish law was given at Mount Sinai. But anyways, the fact that we don't even know some of the animals listed in Leviticus is a good example of that tradition of how to pronounce or what these words mean was not passed on per se. So that's what I was asking.
I don't believe that the whole oral law, like a rabbinic law, was given to Mount Sinai. I mean, for those listening, I know that you know, then I don't know. There's many animals that appear in the 5 books of Moses that different commentators tell you it's different animals because we don't know exactly.
I mean, there's Jewish groups that don't accept turkey, for example, because there's no tradition passed down for that bird because it's a North American animal.
Well, because the Torah doesn't tell you what animals you can eat. It tells you
only 5 negative birds, I think, right? It's like a list of 5 birds.
Right. It tells you what you can't.
Yeah.
And Rashi interprets that to teach that Jews are only allowed to eat animals they have a tradition of eating. I mean, Sephardi Jews never had this understanding. So turkey wasn't an animal that they had in biblical Israel.
Sure, yeah.
So it was supposedly the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov had, like he played a part in introducing turkey to the Jewish world. Because according to Ashkenazi Judaism, you weren't allowed to eat it because it was an unknown bird.
So I heard someone say that the Torah takes the path of least resistance. I don't know if you ever heard the saying before. It was commonly taught to me. I'm from Chabad. Courtney was asking everyone to say what type of person they were. I'm a Lubavitcher. And so we were taught that, well, the Torah takes the path of least resistance. The least amount of words that it needs to write down would be the path it would take. So it gives you the list of 5 birds because really the list of the eatable birds, I guess, I don't know how would you put it, the edible birds would be more greater. So that's why we would say the negative amounts, right? Would that, I don't know if that makes sense.
Anyways.
I don't know. Anyway, I don't know.
I mean, who knows? It tells us what not to eat. So technically every bird that doesn't meet that criteria is allowed. According to, now, like I said, most Ashkenazim don't view it like that. But technically, most Ashkenazim, they shouldn't be eating turkey because they disproved the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov said that the turkey from North America is, similar or related to a bird that they had over there, either in the Middle East or in Europe. And later on, they found out that it wasn't related, but they just kept on eating turkey. Turkey is the most popular meat that they sell in Israel. All the shawarma you eat is turkey. It's not chicken. But,
so we got two people that want to jump on mic. We got Jessica.